Testing. So that's on.
Call this meeting of the school committee for the city of Lewiston, Maine to order for Monday, November 14th, 2022. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next item on the agenda will be school committee introductions. I will start with Ms. Scott.
Linda Scott, Lewiston City Council Representative.
Paul Vogelant, Ward 7 Representative.
Megan Hurd, Ward 6 Representative.
Ashley Medina, Ward 5 Representative.
Tanya Whitlow, Ward 4 Representative. I just want to make sure, does everybody have enough seats? Are we good? Or do we need to get more seats? Okay. Okay.
Elizabeth Eames, Ward 3. Janet Bowden, Ward 2.
Megan Parks at large.
Bruce Damon, Ward 1 Chair.
Jake Langley, Superintendent.
Karen Paquette, Assistant Superintendent.
Layla Abdi, Junior Student Representative.
Welcome, Layla. It's good to have you. Third item on the agenda is to receive and potentially vote on the nomination for director position of ELL. Mr. Superintendent.
I would love to ask Liza McLemore to come up to the podium, if you would. Liza's been working in our ELO department for many years, as far back as I can remember, either in the classroom as a leader, but also picking up things when we started to fall short in different areas. And she has. Can you hear me
Is that Austin? Is that working? It didn't sound like it.
How about now? Hello? How about now? Whoa. How about this one? How about I'm gonna start over then. Oh, okay. So welcome, Eliza, to coming up to the podium. So Liza's worked for many years in Lewis Public Schools in various capacities, but really has stepped up to things as a leader when we had some significant challenges before us with some of the agreements and things that we were trying to meet, and having some personnel things come up. And Liza really picked up the work and ran with it without asking questions, without making demands. Really just stepped up in a challenging situation. And we looked for a pretty dedicated process around moving to a full-time or nominating a full-time director of ELO. And so in the interim, we hired Liza as an interim ELO director. She continued to really do the work without any disappointment, without any hesitation. Showed some serious leadership qualities, and Karen may want to add to that. But in that process, we posted the ELL director position, and I think the work that we do here in Lewiston is pretty well known. And Liza's become known in the professional community also for her good work and how much she's done here in our community. And so whether it was because her name was anticipated to be part of that process or not, Liza was our only applicant. And to be honest, I was okay with it. And so the reason there wasn't a big dynamic process that involved a lot of people was because we had one applicant, and it happened to be the person who was already doing the job at 110%, all that we could ask for. So we're bringing her before you tonight for formal approval for her to drop the interim tag, hopefully, with your support, and let her just continue to do the good work she's doing. Karen, do you want to add to? But Liza, really, before they vote, I want to say thank you for the work you've done over the last 18 months. It's immeasurable. And I don't think people fully comprehend it until they had a chance to sit and talk with you. But what you've done has really been the glue that's kept a pretty good thing together. So thank you.
At this point, I guess I would take a motion for the appointment of Liza McLemore as the ELL director.
So moved.
Ms. Parks, is there a
Second.
second? It's a second by Ms. Whitlow. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you, Liza. Thank you for all the work that you've done over the years as well. No,
If I may, I wouldn't feel right standing up here if I didn't publicly thank Christina Tideswell, who's the assistant director, who over the past few months has stepped up and supported me and the rest of the department. So thank you for your nomination, but I also want to send that over to Christina as well.
Thank you.
Testing. Can you hear me now?
Thanks, Austin.
And big shout out to our tech, Austin.
Thank you, Austin Merritt.
The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Are there any items that members want to remove from the consent agenda? If there is no objection, the consent agenda will be adopted. Does anyone have anything they would like to remove?
Just while we're on this point, the policy subcommittee is aware, and I know that we filled in the chair, but just as a reminder for folks that we did discover through some professional development recently that certain items can go in the consent agenda as it relates to policy. And so if there are no substantive changes to things, those are included. So in our consent agendas, you see items that are also policy that did not have substantive changes.
Okay, so seeing nothing, no one having anything removed, the consent agenda is officially adopted. The next item on the agenda will be public input. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items now and on agenda items later as they come up. Comments that pertain to staff, personal matters, or student issues should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comments shall be directed to the school committee, be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Please start by stating your name, address, and or affiliation with the Lewiston Public Schools. Is there anyone who would like to address the school committee?
Good evening, school committee members. My name is Jay Rich. I am an ELL teacher at McMahon, and I'm also the president of the Lewiston Education Association. I'd like to bring forward an important idea that that would continue the work of equity in Lewiston Public Schools. Many universities, organizations, and school boards across Maine start each meeting with a land acknowledgement. Land acknowledgements are a way to recognize the original stewards of the land of Maine. In Maine, we acknowledge the Penobscot Nations and other Wabanaki territories. Land acknowledgements are brief, important, and take as much time as the Pledge of Allegiance. Furthermore, as of Tuesday, Portland voted to include a land acknowledgement in their city charter. I'd like to suggest the idea of starting school committee meetings with a land acknowledgement. This is an opportunity for LPS to be a leader in the effort to recognize history and land originally belonging to Native tribes. I forwarded you all examples and resources of land acknowledgements and would love to have a discussion on this in the future. Thank you for the work that you do for LPS and considering this important topic.
Thank you, Jay. Anyone else? Seeing none, I'll close the public comment section. Up, Ms. Parks.
Jay, for some reason, I didn't get that email. Are you able to forward it to me again? Thank you. I appreciate it.
Next item on the agenda is item 6. It's to recognize Lewiston Public School staff. Mr. Superintendent.
So I know that we have gone through a number of shifts, and we've talked about turnover and how that can create some different challenges, but we're also seeing how turnover has created some new opportunities and connections with kids. And I had the fortunate experience last week to, on a couple of different days, get into several of our schools. And when I had an opportunity to meet with Principal Niall over at McMahon, we had some time in between a couple of meetings that we needed to have. And I said, let's go visit new teachers' classrooms. And so we had enough time to get to some of them, not all. And this isn't a recognition just for some of our teachers, but I think for all of our new staff who, as they look up and they realize that it's November and it's been like a blink, and they're thinking, wow, routines, and oh, now I got to do grades and parent teacher conferences. And some of these folks have never done these pieces, and they're executing it with grace. And I think the nice thing that we got to see as we walked through was students having great relationships and people caring about their wellness as part of their curriculum and their teaching. And it was a quick visit, but what I saw fascinated me, at least as a superintendent, that people that are new to our district and or new to the classroom from a teacher responsibility perspective had the kids in the palm of their hands. And that's something that we can only hope for. And so I asked Charlotte if we could take an opportunity to recognize those who could make it tonight and some others who could not, to just say a thank you and recognize some new teachers who have survived the first few months of school, but who are also engaging kids and navigating environments really, really well. I was impressed with what I saw. And we're always trying to grow, but to see people come in and really take on the challenge that they have, I was really impressed. And Charlotte, I was hopeful that you would come up and maybe share a few words about Sarah and Jen, who are here tonight. Sarah Weibark and Jen Jordan, if you could also come up to the podium to be recognized and get a thank you from all of us.
Hi, so I'm Charlotte Niall. I'm the principal at McMahon, and I will add just a few more words about Sarah and Jen. So Sarah teaches 5th grade and she teaches 2 reading and writing courses, and Jen is teaching 4th grade. And so in addition to the social emotional greatness that they've brought to our classroom communities, they've also got right into the new curriculum. There's a new curriculum for math, and then it's new curriculum for you as it's her first year teaching. And so they've just dove right in and they ask questions and they work with our coaches, and my door is always open. And so we're always chatting and they're learning. And so I'm happy to have them on board. They've definitely been a great addition to our Lewiston schools. So Sarah and Jen.
Did have a. We did have a few others that couldn't make it. Mr. Rogers, Ms. King, and also Ms. Storr. Mr. Rogers, yes, Mr. Brandon Rogers. Yeah, I believe it's a second career for him, and you should have seen his classroom. It's fantastic. So just wanted to share that.
Next item on the agenda is to receive an update on the facilities project list.
Executive Director of Student Operations, Bill Grant, coming up to the podium. You did have some information shared in your packet. We were just going to, there's been some inquiry on just how many projects are going on and where there's the funding coming from and those kinds of things as we approach the budget season and as we think about the ESSER fund sunsetting eventually, and all of those various components. So we wanted to share those and thank Member Eames for bringing that up as something that would be good to be covering around this time of year.
Yeah, so thank you for bringing that up because it does kind of come through in that piecemeal and even as I've started in this role a little over a year, it's like, what are all the projects? But I think the easiest way for you to kind of look at it, right now we have 3 buckets where you'll see most of your projects. You have your general fund, which is our general budget that we go through to put together. Then we have the newer bucket and the bucket that does have some sunset, and that's our ESSER funding. That's a huge amount of funding, and there's some pretty significant projects in there. And then the third bucket, and how we usually get a lot of capital improvement projects, is the LCIP, which we put out every year, and some of those projects get funded. Some of the ones in there don't get funded. So that's what you have in your packets. Those three project lists. And then within those lists, you can obviously see where we're at with some of those things. Some of the ESSER funded projects, I think as we were getting the ESSER funding and things, we had this whole huge list of projects, but now we've got a lot in progress because we kind of have tapped the brakes some so that we're making sure that we're following our procurement policy and that we're going to be correctly spending those funds according to what that policy was, as kind of COVID has come to a different side and we can breathe a little easier. We don't really have an excuse to do it now. We have to go out to bid. We have to go out to RFP, request for proposal, to get those projects done. So I don't know if you have any general questions about the list or lists, but I'm happy to answer anything.
Ms. Eames.
Thank you so much for doing this. I'm curious about the status of the facilities condition survey that you wanted to do.
Yep.
Where are we in that process?
So that was one of those LCIP projects that was recently funded. We will be going out for a request for proposal, probably, I would say, the beginning of the new year. And, that usually stays open for about a month and a half, and then looking at those and having that. We kind of set a tentative timeline that we would like to have that report kind of as the summer begins. And that kind of sets that stage for getting ready to put in for LCIP projects a year from now. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Hurd.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you give us an update on our energy audit as they had come to present to us? Is that something that we're going to be looking at come budget season, where we're at with that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So the facilities committee has done a lot of work with that. It's interesting with that. that performance contract. We know that it came back and the committee, I believe, shared with you that the size of the project, the dollar amount of that project, and the number of years that we would be kind of tied into that 20 years was not something that we wanted to move forward with that contract. So we've kind of looked at it more as what are some of these things that we could do as more of an a la carte and see that they can put projects together in that sense where it's not as long of a term. We can see how the relationship would work out for those things. It's been kind of an interesting thing with that because we now know some projects that we really need to get onto. And the question will be, how do we fund those projects? So the performance contract provides a means for capital to be able to do those things, but also offer the savings. But we also know with some of those things, well, maybe we could use some ESSER dollars for those. So we've got to be as smart as possible with that. We also, that's not the only thing going on. And later on in the agenda, you'll see one of the things that's taken a lot of our time, decide whether we're going to move forward with a project. But we've just got some information back from them. And it's with Superintendent Langless. So we'll probably have a discussion about that to see if we'll move forward and bring forward the contract.
I just want to add a couple of things. One, Facilities Director Josh Bro was here, and Josh, I don't know if you also want to come up, if you want to chime into anything or if there's any questions. But we are looking at that JCI piece and some pieces. The facilities subcommittee has done some good work, and we've had some good representation from Greg and other members of the committee who have really looked at each of the proposals. And I don't want to give the purse away tonight, I don't think, but I want to say that we've had some very good, thorough internal conversations to analyze, are these returns what we want to do with taxpayer dollars at this point in time? All of it, some of it, none of it. And so we're really being deliberate and intentional in our process. I think that's why that particular piece hasn't come back to you just yet. And we have some other pieces that are in the works, obviously a big one tonight that we're looking at.
I honestly don't have anything major to add. Bill pretty much hit it all on the head. I'm happy to answer any questions specific to any of the projects on the list you may have right now, or if you want to send emails in through Jake or Bill down to my attention, I'll be happy to get them and reply to send back to you anything you want to dig deeper on. But the biggest thing, the one that I'm looking forward to the most, is that facility condition assessment, because it will seed our LCIP request for 15 years and really kind of benchmark where we're at. So not only does it tell us what is, I don't want to say wrong, like we have things out there that we don't know are wrong, but it tells you how much you can expect to spend as things reach the end of their life cycle. So it'll identify like rooftop units, air handlers. Are we on borrowed time? Do we have 5 more years before we have to start planning for replacement? So it really is the backbone to setting up a long-term plan for facilities, which is we haven't had for years, or better part of a decade anyway.
Anyone else with questions for Bill or Josh? Miss Ames?
Thanks. So the ESSER 3 has been allocated for HVAC upgrades for the various schools. And can you give us a status on all those upgrades, the various schools?
Spoiler alert, if you look 2 points ahead, that's coming.
Okay.
It's 2 up on the agenda.
One. Okay.
And then we
But
have.
I
so
didn't
that-
think that was all the schools. I thought that was just
No,
one
so
of them.
That one is specific to the middle school.
Yeah, exactly.
The other very large one, it's going to be close to $6 to $7 million, will be the Lewiston High School ventilation system upgrade. That is currently out for request for qualifications.
Mhm.
We've received some questions. The answers to those questions will be going out tomorrow, and I believe their packages are due within the next week and a half. I think it's the end of next week that those are due by, or middle of next week, something like that. So we'll have a lot more information to bring back to the facilities subcommittee to review specific to the high school. And then there's some other projects that are a little bit smaller that we'll start bidding out this winter for work to be done in the summer.
Okay, thank you.
And just for kind of a process, so people understand, our facilities committee kind of serves as that, looking at requests for proposals and kind of representing the school committee to decide what's going to be moved forward on that. So oftentimes that stuff is going to be brought there. We also might have situations with our procurement policy, anything over $25,000 we're to put out to bid unless there's sole source circumstances. But there's kind of this micro purchase between 10,000 and 25,000 where you kind of have to go through getting quotes. And sometimes with those, we'll bring that to the facilities committee to have a look to see that we're vetting and kind of having not just management look at these quotes that we got. So put some integrity in the process.
And Bill, we did file for that revolving school renovation project, right?
Yep, we got it all in and it is up there and they confirmed that they received it. So we have good hands and catch something.
They announced this, the electric school buses for this had been allocated. I assume we didn't get it because it was not mentioned here. So I'm assuming we didn't get it. Any plans to reapply?
So we did find out that we didn't get it, but we're also told that there was at least anticipated more of that in the pipeline. So to keep our forms ready.
Ms. Scott.
Just to let the public know, since we're having a discussion on facilities, the facilities committee consists of myself and Chairman Bruce Damon, along with Josh and Bill and the superintendent, just so that everybody is aware of who is on the facilities committee.
Right, and we have had input from some others, Megan Hurd's husband, Greg, who has some expertise in the area. He's helped as well. So it's a group effort. I'm not sure that my 55 years in the industry lends much integrity to it, but we'll do what we can. But that's good. So, Bill, do you know when we'll hear on that revolving fund?
I believe that December might be a date. Ultimately, things aren't awarded though until February. So.
I have a slightly off topic question. Josh, can you turn the air conditioner off in here? Because it's freezing. Thank you.
That's a test, Josh. You better get it right. Yep.
Thank you. So I'm just looking at this list and installing generators is one of them. Do we know like how often our schools lose power? Like I know McMahon a couple weeks ago was without power and my kids think it's cool to eat lunch in the dark, but some students might not think that's cool. So I'm just wondering like what do we have any idea of like how often they lose? Yeah, like is there a number out there or a percentage or
No, but mainly those generators are because of our servers and ensuring that our facilities along with our food as well isn't ruined. So nutrition and technology. It's kind of interesting you bring that up because I think it's important to note that we did have also in the RFQ that's mentioned in there for generators for Dingley. But we've since decided that servers are going to be moved and we don't need a generator at Dingley any longer. So we don't I don't have, unless you have data exactly how much we lose power. I know that Friday we were frantically running around. I'm actually kind of, okay hearing that your kids had fun in the dark because not everybody did. But, it's brought up a big question for school safety purposes of, what you do in a power outage and how long you can, be in that situation. But it's really more for preserving the facility than it is to say, okay, power's out. What are we going to do?
I just want to add a couple of things. One is Bill is absolutely right. And Alyssa's behind Josh. A couple she'll be up here next to introduce someone. So you have no idea what Alyssa's nights look like when she gets the alert that the cooler is off and she has $15,000 worth of food inside of it. And so it's a scramble. And we certainly risk losing all of that product on those days if it happens when it's warm enough. The other piece is we have pretty stringent federal requirements for how we maintain and keep things. It's not like at my house when my fridge dies and I kind of smell it to see if I can still eat it. She has to follow those very specific guidelines. So I also want to add that when we lose power to school, it becomes complicated for a number of reasons because mobilizing transportation to get everybody home, if that's what we need to do, is a very difficult thing to do because we have these windows of the buses stop around 9:30. They run again for pre-K things at noon, and then they're back at moving around 1:30 or so to get to the high school and middle school for the 2 o'clock dismissal. So the mobilization piece is really hard because we don't have the capacity and that short turnaround. It almost would have to land at just the right time to be able to move a group of kids. These generators do not power the entire school. They keep significant components up. So it really is more emergency based. I just want to be clear to people that if power goes out at, say, school blank, I don't want to use the name because I don't want to jinx myself, early in the morning, the other issues that we have that people may not realize. So a kitchen and custodial is an obvious thing, but most of our schools now are more energy efficient and consumption efficient. So your bathrooms, they have sensored washing faucets, no power, no sensor, no water. So, the water feed coming in, most of our schools is city, so that's okay, but you still can't wash your hands. You still can't clean a pot. You can't. So we have some complications when we do lose power. We also have a pretty vast communication network within all our schools, but they all run on power, electricity. So how do you get the message out to 2,000 people on a high school campus that this is what we're going to do next? And there's no bell and there's no intercom so we have challenges when the power goes out. So generators will help. I just want to be clear with people that wonder if their children are being sent home because we have no power at a particular school. When you just heard about generators, that it's a stabilization emergency use, not to run the whole facility.
Anything else, gentlemen? Anything else from the board?
When does the facilities committee meet?
It's not necessarily a regular schedule. A lot of times it's based on Bill will have something that we need to talk about. It's Thursdays typically at 3, I think. Thursdays at
4, usually at 4:30.
Thursdays at 4. So yeah, so I mean, it varies. It's not like every 2 weeks. Because we don't necessarily, it's not quite as scheduled as that. We have several things that are going out, RFPs and RFQs, and the responses from those are timed. So we'll have it in time. So we'll try to keep you updated every time we meet and go from there. It is one of the standing committees. So anything else?
I should be able to see my breath.
Next item on the agenda is to introduce a new Assistant Director of Transportation. And I don't know whether Alyssa's going to do this or Jake's going to do this.
Really, it's I'm going to ask Alyssa Roman, our Director of Transportation and Nutrition, to come up, and she will do the introduction.
Good evening, everyone. So since I've been operating by myself for a couple weeks, I am very, very excited that tonight to present a new Assistant Director of Transportation. And when I say I've been working by myself, that's totally a lie, because I have Hudson Bus Lines that has really worked hard with me over the last couple weeks. And all of our bus drivers as well. And so I'm very happy. Today was Kayla's very first day with us, but she'll be hopping in the mix. I know I was very happy to send out over the weekend some new versions of some run sheets. I know Jake and Karen got a preview, which have actual times associated with speed limit, 911 maps, one-way streets, and all of the above. So that will help us optimize our routes and look as we get bus drivers on board of where we need to split up routes. But I'm very pleased that Kayla is able to join us. She has over 11 years of routing experience working with another company. And I'm really pleased that she's also worked with various routing softwares, not just one, which means she'll be able to change and adapt with our new software as well. So I'm really excited for her to join our small but mighty team. And I will see if anyone has questions or anything.
Could we have her last name?
Denico.
Denico.
Denico?
Yes.
I just want to add that not only is she coming with all that experience, but she's a parent of students in Lewiston Public Schools and is very excited to be part, I think, but at least she said she was. She's to be part of the solution to some of our woes with transportation because she gets the call from Jake or I every day as well. So I'm excited to have Kayla join our team as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
Are we doing better as far as the number of bus drivers?
This is actually, so I'm really pleased that over the last couple of weeks, we have a new terminal manager. For those that don't know, and I'm hoping to bring her in at some point and introduce her to you guys as well. And she has a lot of experience. She drives a bus as well. And what I'm actually seeing is that some employees that maybe had left previously are coming back. And so that's really good. We have employees in training as well. And we have a trainer on site as well with those busing. So what I'm seeing is actually we're on the cusp of actually taking some of our larger routes and saying, how can we split them up to have less kids on the buses? I'm looking at those times as well for how long kids are on buses and what we can do to ease up some of those burdens as well. So overall, I got a knock on wood, but overall, I'm actually seeing a really good change as far as we're getting more personnel. And through our contract with Hudson, there is room to grow financially in that approved budget that we had gone through with the contract. So we're not looking to go outside of that financial piece to make this happen as well. So that's important with that. And they've been very working with technology changes as well. So I'm actually seeing some really good movement in the transportation. We've been able to get more of our kids that are in special circumstances with other towns, also on transport that we hadn't in the past. So overall, things are looking in a good direction. And with the call outs that we have, we do still have some buses. A lot of it is related to things that are really just uncontrollable personnel that most businesses would face, whether they're bereavement or medical concerns. So I'm not seeing somebody just say, I'm not showing up to drive today. In fact, if anything, we're telling them when they're really not well, that we don't want to risk anyone's safety with having them drive, and they're working through those as well. So overall, I hope to have more good reports coming your way as far as we increase these services and work to optimize our runs.
Thank you. Any other questions or?
Yeah.
Oh, I can. Yeah, so I'm super excited. I knew I was coming into challenges. Challenges is where I like to be. I feel like I have a lot to give this team. I'm excited that it's not perfect because that means I can make it better. So yeah, I'm just excited to be a part of this team. I met everybody in the building today, from the basement to the top. I'll be working with many facets, which is great. I talked to IT today and told them I was really excited with them because we've come up in my previous experience. IT is very vital to come up with processes that make life easier. So I can't wait to feel them out and see what they have to offer. I spoke with some of the ladies next to me about our systems, because you guys' systems are a little bit different than mine. And like, yeah, so I'm just excited to be a part of the team. I have 13 years of logistical experience. I worked with Walmart logistics, so I had 140 truck drivers. I know, like routing, we had 50 minutes to route. You have to be safe. There's many variables. So I'm just excited. I've learned a couple new systems, worked with IT with new systems and testing and routing. And so I'm just here for it. And I'm a parent, so it's important to me that, buses are running and safe. And the manager is actually my child's bus driver when I went and met her today. So yeah, I think it's going to be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Alyssa. Thank you, Kayla. Welcome aboard. The next item on the agenda is to receive and potentially vote on the ESSER project to complete the middle school.
So I have Bill and Josh coming back up just in case they're needed. As we talk about the various challenges that we have, because of timeframes, because of procurement, which is a nice way of saying, how did you get the job going and done? Essentially, there's a lot of federal rules and a lot of state rules around how you can use what dollars. And so, as Bill mentioned earlier, and Josh alluded to, we find ourselves in this conundrum of some of our projects are so big that there are only certain people that might be able to achieve them. And we have safety factors. We have, can the work be done in this space safely during school when kids are there? Can it be scheduled? Can we get the equipment here? Can it get completed? And so, and Bruce can't bid on them because that would be a conflict of interest. So you started getting to this land of these projects are so big and so specialized that you have a limited amount of places you can go to do it. But any project of this size, we're going to bring to you once we have vetted that through facilities and had conversations about. This is an ESSER project, but it's to the tune of $1.7 million. And this would complete the ventilation at the middle school, including the auditorium and the gymnasium, with some other components that are required to do that. I don't know if Josh or Bill want to chime in on some of the needs of that project. But this is that kind of project where we're bringing to you to say, we don't know of another way to get this done in this window of time. And contractors are quite busy. So if we're going to do this, we need a vote of support, and then we will move the process along.
And the vote is what, when we look at our procurement policy, we're bypassing the bid process so that, and really it's because we've got a time frame that we've got to get this project done. Plus there's also reasons for a sole source.
Deeper dive into what we're trying to do with this money? Would that be beneficial?
I think a little detail is good. Yeah.
I think,
You do have the project proposal in your packet.
yeah, maybe just the elevator talk.
Yeah, absolutely. I won't kill you with jargon, although Bruce and I could really probably kill you with jargon for a while, but basically what we're doing is we have a really large air handler that provides heat and cooling for the auditorium. It's beyond its useful life. Typical life expectancy on that is about 15 years. It's probably 20 plus years old. I don't know the exact age, but I know it's beyond time to replace that. So a big chunk of that is replacing that very large air handler, redoing the exterior ductwork that is deteriorating, and we don't think it's going to last for the life expectancy of what would be the new unit. It also puts a platform around that unit for easier service for our service companies. That would make that auditorium at that point, HVAC wise, state of the art, because we just took out the steam heat, put baseboard heat in there as part of a previous LCIP project and getting rid of the steam there. That was Siemens. This is also Siemens. So it's a continuation of that project in the auditorium by replacing that air handler. The gym was ventilated through exhaust fans and a kind of passive ventilation system. So it would suck air out of the space up high and in the worst spot where you want to catch the nasty, hot, sweaty air. And that would just bring in air from the outside to replace that air. It's extremely inefficient. The system is extremely broken and not working at all. So there's no ventilation in that gym right now. So what this proposal also does is puts a very large air handler on top of the dining area of the middle school, ducts through the roof and into the gym, provides heat, ventilation, and air conditioning for that space. So that means we're running a brand new power. And I believe it's hot water, it might be gas, to get to this new unit, all the steel to support it underneath, which ties into the building structure. That's basically what's going on. So in theory, that entire building at this point, other than a couple of nooks and crannies, because it is so old, would be properly ventilated, heated, and air conditioned without steam on a DDC or a digital control system instead of pneumatics, which was also part of that last project. Those brave enough to go down to the boiler room that day we were there.
I do want to add to that sole source procurement piece. There's a lot of language, but really just means what we'd like to do with all the factors of the supply chain, labor shortages, limitations on cost and funding is to bypass the bid process to move forward with this project, really because it's time and we have the factors. And with those factors, it is permissible to waive this process. We've waived other things in the process. My hesitation, well, two things. One, anything of this cost, I want you to see and vote on and understand. And two, when we're bypassing a process at this point in the game, the further away from COVID we get, the more hesitant I become as a superintendent to say, we're just going to do this project and waive the bid process. So that's really why this is before you tonight.
And then we have pretty thoroughly vetted the documents that they provided for us as to what the project was. It's a lot of money, but it's two of the largest spaces in the middle school, and both of them are certainly in need of something major. So this will pretty much finish now we have the new boilers, this pretty much finishes the middle school for probably 15, 20 years as far as that side of the house would be concerned. So
Yeah, we'll have cosmetic things to fix, but mechanically it should be sound for years to come.
Ms. Whitlow?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask about the procurement policy. Is that something that needs to be looked at to edit it, to make it?
I think it's fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
It's really, especially with ESER, it's federal dollars. So it's a federal standard. So our policy really says that we'll be compliant with state and federal standards. So.
And our policy, there are avenues to get to where we are right now with this one, where if something is proprietary, like if we wanted to do a controls system upgrade in a building, it's gonna go to Siemens because all of our district is with Siemens controls. Therefore, you drive it to them so you don't end up with conflicting pieces. Kind of like you wouldn't put a Chevy engine in a Ford. You know, if you needed an engine and that's where you needed to go get it, we go get it there. So the policy as it is now, it's pretty firmly worded to make you go get bids unless it's obvious that bids is not reasonable, and then you have an out.
Yeah. And it really aligns completely to federal standards. So
it seems
2020. I think.
Thanks. I'm curious. I haven't seen many of these in my life. So the part that's struck through, and then there's the part that's added on the last page. Or the penultimate page, I guess. I'm not sure what it means. I don't know how to read it.
So some of that is processed in the process of acquiring this bid and having the engineering done and getting plans and prints. There were things that I would not agree to. And
Yeah,
there were
that's the
things,
crossed out
so that's the
thing.
crossed out piece.
Yeah.
And when it says per that individual, those kinds of things, it's a shift in the contract language that
Right.
I wasn't going to be willing to float a price and have it go up on us. once
That's
we
what I
sign
wanted
this.
to hear. Yeah, thank you.
Ms. Bowden?
Thank you. I guess my only question, I understand this is federal money, and we're following some standards with the money that we're spending. Is there anything that we are now, by doing this project now, is there anything that, I don't know how to say it correctly, possibly like giving up, or was this money tied to something else that now we're going to be losing?
So this money, when we first filled out this layer of ESER funding, this project was identified immediately as something we could do to finish off the middle school, and it aligned to the criteria of the ESER dollars. And so the other big mechanical type things that we have were actually written up and approved by the state a year ago, at least. And these are the very same projects that we're referring to.
Thank you.
These projects go back to our initial ESER applications. So they, right from day one, these were projects identified as things we wanted to do. They address ventilation issues in our buildings.
At this point, I'd need a motion to approve the expenditure for the upgrade at the middle school. Ms. Scott?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the ESER project funds to complete the middle school project.
Do we have a second? Second by Ms. Eames. Is there discussion? On favor? It's 9-0. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is agenda item number 10, is to receive an update on the mission on mission vision goals, part 2 draft. Mr. Superintendent.
So when we came into school in 2020, we started having conversations about mission, visions, and goals, and trying to build that out. So this is actually a school committee mission, vision, goal. And I said part 2 because part 1, with some direction of the committee, was we need to get lots of input. And so we did lots of input, and then we went back to school. And now that things are rolling, we said we'd revisit this sometime in the fall. And it's late fall and feels like winter, but wanted to put it back in front of you with some weaving of things that have been brought to us from an input perspective. And I'm calling it draft for part 2, because really looking for your input at this level, at this point, or to see if we need to do something else with it before we then share it out publicly to get another round of input. So really, this is that intermediary input phase. So I'm hopeful tonight to get some input and take notes and see what we can modify to push back out. But I also made a short list of things that we wanted to try to hold true to, because past mission, vision, goal statements, a lot of feedback that we got was it was so vast that it was not sustainable with resources. It was not achievable when we benchmarked things. And so we're trying to be smart about making the goal something that we can have a measurable effect with, but also not so many things that it doesn't get the attention it deserves. I guess what I'm trying to say is we want to do a few things well and see how it went, so that we can reiterate that and do it better, or shift our thinking. But we don't want to do 30 things poorly. And I think people are really busy, so if they have a narrow focus, it would be beneficial. So we want it to be easy to understand, achievable, avoid having so much included that none of it gets done. Anchor the work and inform the decision-making process to be inclusive of all students and plan for the most vulnerable students, which I think is aligned to a lot of things that this committee is already doing. So that was just some language that we shared there. Again, mission was really about relationships, instruction, and pathways to success. And we toyed with, should that be students? Is that everybody, community? And so you get into semantics pretty quickly. From a vision perspective, focusing on excellence through equity. And then we included some intentions there and also the goals that we had last year in our budget process. So really looking for feedback from anyone here and also the community.
Questions, Ms. Eames?
I am appreciative of what we had in last year's budget, where there was a lot of stuff about teaching and instruction. But the ones that are in draft for part 2, instruction only shows up once. And it seems like education is the business we're in. So I'm hoping that we can get a little more language about education into this particular draft.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to weigh in on this? Others on the committee? Questions, comments? Ms. Hurd?
Thank you. So in the bullet points, I see improve our special education, grow pathways to graduation. And I think we had talked a little bit about previously about our students that are, I don't even know what it's considered now. It's not gifted and talented. Is it gifted and talented? But I think we had touched a little bit on that, but I don't really see anything of that on here. So I want to make sure we're also supporting our students that are on that higher end. Like, how do we prepare them for college? If they're already taking college classes, like what else can we do to help them further educate them, like support them in what their needs are? Because I think sometimes maybe that group of students is less than the other groups, and sometimes they may get forgotten. So I just don't want to forget them and give them as many options and resources that we can throw at them.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. So when I'm looking at the draft for part 2 and under the mission, and you said there was, you were looking for a little bit more clarity in relationship to relationships, instructions and pathways to accept success. I think that the community is a big part of that. I think that has to be included in that. I think that a lot of what we're seeing today, we need the community involved, but we also need our parents more involved. We need everybody involved in the education of our students. On the intentions, I think that we need to narrow that down a little bit. I think we can actually, put some of that together in one paragraph. Right, so when we're looking at support, implement high quality student-centered instruction, and then right after that, it says develop measures and support pathways to student life preparation to improve. I think we can kind of incorporate some of that stuff together so that it doesn't have to be so lengthy there. And I did have a question on when we look at the bottom of the page where goals that were incorporated into last year's budget process that remain driving factors. We had extensive conversations and did a lot of budget improvement to our special education structure to improving programming. And I'm wondering, and not necessarily to eliminate that, but does that need to be high priority when we're looking at stability, communication, school safety, and instruction systematically being what should probably be more priority right now? But I'd like to hear everybody else's opinion on that.
Oops, thank you. That's helpful. I included those items at the bottom because I felt like they really made a lot of sense last year. And I didn't know if they should be folded into this or if we are ready to move to a different space. And so thank you for mentioning that. Probably I shouldn't have used numbers there because I didn't want to rank them,
Right.
but I think it has that feel. So that might be something I can consider also in the next draft.
Some of the others still are required, but that one we really did tackle. Yeah.
Would it be the feedback to try to find a way to incorporate those 6 items into whatever the mission, vision, and goals are? Okay.
Anything else on this? Seeing nothing, we'll move on. Agenda item number 11, to review and potentially vote on a second read of the following policy, CHCAA student handbooks. Ms. Paquette.
Thank you. So this policy, you should see the changes you suggested at the last meeting reflected here. I did want to just share that in regards to the acknowledgement of receipt of the handbook, we do have a new online registration platform that's part of Power School. And our hope is that next year, families will be able to make those changes right in that system. And we'll have the ability, so we won't have to use all the paper that we sent home, the big old folders that we sent home. And part of that process, whether it's a new registration or whether it's an update or verification of information, can include an acknowledgement of receiving and looking through the handbook. So I confirmed that this week. So we do have a mechanism in which we can do that digitally. If families go through that process on that system. And if there is a hard copy requested, then we can obviously use a paper pencil acknowledgement if that's the way in which a family requests that. So I just wanted to add that this is the second read. As I said, you should see the changes. And we just need, if you have any other questions, or we can go to the vote.
Ms. Bowden.
Thanks. I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve the second reading of policy CHCAA.
We have a second by Ms. Hurd. Is there any discussion? This has been through policy committee, right? Yes, okay.
Yes.
Seeing none, all in favor? Unanimous, 9-0. Next item on the agenda is 12, to review and potentially vote on the deletion of the following policy. 8 IHBEA-R Lao Plan.
So you'll also see, if you're looking at the agenda, that item number 13 is to receive and potentially vote on a Lao plan. So I'll do my best to explain. So the Lao plan is actually a plan that has gone through the curriculum committee as well. We were, through our audit of our policy manual, we were informed that we did not need to have this plan as part of our policy manual. There's already a policy that states that we are required by law to do this. And that was one of the policies that was in the consent agenda this evening. There was no changes to that, but the changes is that the actual plan does not need to be part of the policy manual. You as a committee do need to hear that plan and approve that plan, and that plan does need to go to be public. It needs to be posted on our website and be available in our schools, and our staff need to be well aware of what that plan states. So this deletion is the old Lao plan, and we're looking to delete it from the policy manual, and then you will receive information and hopefully approve the new plan in the next item.
Ms. Whitlow.
I'll make a motion to approve the deletion of the Lao plan.
We have a motion by Ms. Whitlow, second by Ms. Eames. Any discussion? All in favor? So moved. Agenda item number 13, potentially vote on the Lao plan. Liza McLemore.
So as she's making her way to the podium, I'll just state that the one that you deleted was very outdated. And since the time of its last review, there's been a lot of changes, not only to the law, but also to the requirements of providing services to our students here in Lewiston. And the whole first page, as Liza's going to explain, it really references all of those places where we've taken our guidance and the law to make these changes. So I'll turn it over to Liza.
All right, so what you're seeing in front of you, the Lao plan, this comes from the Maine Department of Education. They provide us with a template, and then it's our job to fill in the specifics to Lewiston Public Schools. So you'll see there are 9 different sections. In the first section, as Karen mentioned, that's all the legal basis for why we do what we do and what we do. So that is, none of that is specific to Lewiston Public Schools. That's directly from the Maine Department of Ed. Section 2 breaks down the multilingual learner identification. And again, the majority of this comes from the Maine Department of Ed, but we added in some specifics about how we do it here in Lewiston. We have an intake and assessment coordinator and a process that we follow while still remaining true to the process that the Maine DOE requires us to follow. So it breaks down the compliance steps and everything that we do to identify students, as well as the scoring criteria for what would qualify a student as a multilingual learner. That is a big difference that you'll see, is some of the language we've shifted. So, and this is something that we're going to start doing here in Lewiston as well. Rather than using ELL or English language learner, we're going to begin shifting to ML or multilingual learner, which is language that was adopted by the state last year. And it's to encompass a more broad group of students, because the reality is that many of our students speak English and an additional language. So by calling them multilingual learners, it's more inclusive and it's more focused on the positives and the asset-based approach that we want to take. So that section breaks down how we identify multilingual learners. And section 3 goes into the development of an individualized language acquisition program or plan. We call it an ILAP. And it explains how the services differ. And this is where you're going to see a lot of the adjustments that we made as a result of the Department of Justice agreement to best meet the needs of our students. And one thing to note is that nothing in here is changing what we currently do. We've made a lot of adjustments over the past few years to be compliant and make sure that we're meeting students' needs. So this, the update to this LAU plan really just captures all of that information. Section 4, 4 and 5 talk about meaningful and equitable access. So 4 is about access to academics and extracurriculars. 5 is about equitable personnel and facilities and materials. It helps make sure that we cannot and will not discriminate against multilingual learners because of their language needs. Section 6 talks about the annual English language proficiency test, the access for ELLs and alternate access for ELLs that we administer each year. Section 7 talks about how students exit the program. And they do. We were happy to have several students exit last year, and we're hopeful that that will continue this year. As well as monitoring our programs. The ongoing program evaluation is something that we do internally in our office, where we look at data and the programming that students are in to make sure that they are making adequate growth and that the program and curricula is meeting the needs of our students. And the last section focuses on meaningful communication with parents and guardians. So this is where we really put into practice interpretation and translation access, making sure that there's a formalized protocol for how families can request that at any time to hopefully allow us to better collaborate together to meet the needs of their children. So that was a lot of information and a lot of pages, but I'll entertain any questions that you may have.
Ms. Whitlaw.
Hi, I'm not sure this is the right avenue to ask these questions, but I know that there are certain guidelines that qualify somebody to enter into the MLL program and to exit that. And they seem very like rigid and almost too many restrictions and guidelines. Is there talk about at like a state level or legislature? I don't know who changes these things, that it wouldn't be as restrictive, and so that we can graduate students out of the program sooner, or I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, there hasn't been much talk about that recently, but a few years ago, there's an advisory committee that I sit on, Christina sits on, and we talked about exit criteria. The state of Maine only recognizes the access for ELLs as exit criteria. And so that's nothing that we can control. However, we have had input. I believe that, you know, that's a snapshot in time. It's a moment in time. There's a lot of factors that play into the results of that, but we do the best that we can to set our students up for success. So short answer is not recently, but it is something that does come up every once in a while that we have input on.
But that's good to hear that you guys are on in those groups and making suggestions at least, and hopefully you're being heard. So thank you.
Ms. Eames.
in the committee meeting, I think you said that they changed the criteria on the test from 6 to 4.5.
Yeah.
I think that's important to be said out loud.
Yep, in 2016, they changed they adjusted the rigor of the test. And so as a result, the old exit criteria was a 6.0. They reduced it to a 5.0. And then part of this advisory committee and getting input from stakeholders, they reduced it even further to a 4.5. And the rationale for a 4.5 is looking at the requirements of grade level standards in content areas. They said that a 4.5 equates to what a native English speaker would be able to do in order to meet those grade level standards.
Ms. Parks.
This may be a silly question, but is there a way to, for any of us that are interested in it, in accessing like a sample version of the test, or for us to be able to take that to see where we would fall on that? Because it would be really helpful for us to know what it's like to take that test.
Yeah, so there are sample questions, which gives you an idea of what the students experience. So there's 4 different parts of the test: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. So even though it's one assessment, it's really 4 small assessments that combine for one composite score. And so on the WIDA website, there are sample questions so that you can see what that looks like. It wouldn't necessarily give you a score so that you see where you would fall, but they're called can-do descriptors, and it describes each level within each of the 4 domains. So it gives you an idea of, what a child needs to show and what they can do at that level to score the 4.5.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms. Scott.
Thank you. So first off, I would just like to say that this is fantastic to what we had before. I mean, all of this information, all the detail that's involved here. I would like to ask though, is this going to be translated into several languages so that parents can take a look at this and other people can take a look and see what all of this is saying here?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I had another question. I forgot it. My goodness. I'll think of it in a second. Thank you.
Mr. Beauplan.
Thank you. A short while ago, when the school committee met at Lewiston Middle School, we had a curriculum subcommittee meeting the hour before, and much of this information was vetted. And I think the members of the subcommittee that attended were completely satisfied with the direction we are taking and where we're going and how we're going to get there. Thank you.
And if I may add, after following that meeting, we also pulled a team of teachers together to take a look. I took that subcommittee's feedback, made some adjustments, and then had a team of teachers take a look at it as well. So we made some additional tweaks, but we're feeling pretty confident about where we're at, where we landed with this lab plan.
Anything else? Ms. Scott.
Thank you. I remembered my other question. So when you're putting this together, how much input do we have from some of our new Mainers that are coming in and those that are learning the English language being part of the process with all of this?
As far as the development of it?
Yes.
For this particular one, we did not, but we certainly can get some feedback and input.
I think that would be important, especially with the parents who have students that are involved in this. I mean, if my student was in there, I'd want to have a voice in being part of that. So I think that that should be part of that. Thank you.
Mr. Beauplan.
I echo Member Scott's point of view, but I want to remind the committee that our hands are somewhat tied by the Department of Education. We can't freelance and go where a particular situation is needed. That's bureaucracy, unfortunately.
Thank you. I would need a motion. Who's was there public input? That's Liza's making the presentation, but when we're done, before we take a vote, I will allow some public input. So are we all set, Liza, at this point? Committee? Okay, I'll open it up to public comment at this point on this item. I'd open it up to public input at this time.
Yes, hello. I'm a 2020 graduate. I was gonna give a comment on the ELL, MLL. So during my 4 years of high school, like I kept taking the test for ELL. It didn't well at my ninth grade first year. I took it. I got like a 3 for my results on the test for writing, speaking, and it didn't at the half I was put in a classes where I can take it US no modern history, like all that. I was given that on my 10th grade, so I was pretty excited about it. But until my 12th grade, I still kept taking the test, which I was told to get like a 6 in order to graduate from ELL. So I thought the test is pointless to me since I'm already on my path. I follow the catalog and I follow what I'm needed in order to graduate, and not stay behind a year or two in order to get to know what do I need to graduate, or what is missing from me, what level do I need in order to take the classes that I need in college in order to get the pad that I need. So considering DNL is good, but I think the test is pointless since that's everything I got.
Okay. Could you identify yourself for us, please?
Yeah.
For the record.
Amir Musa. As I said, I'm a 2020 graduate student.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else?
That'll be it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
I guess my name is Garab Dees and I'm not the graduate of 2020. Just a suggestion. I think the system has made it to cheat. I had 3 adults now that graduated from Lewiston High School, and the department, the education of department has, I think, had a criteria like if there is somebody who speaks other language than English in the household, you are LL. So I told, when they call me and when they ask me, my kids, no, we don't speak any other language, we speak English. So that's how I cheated the system, and that needs to be changed. I just want other information just to bring it out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Liza, I'm just curious if you want to say anything to that as far as the criteria, or just tell me if I'm saying it right, that language other than English at home is a mandated criteria, not something we created.
Yes, that's correct. So the language use survey is a Maine Department of Education form that all Maine schools use. However, the United States has a language use survey. Every state's allowed to adapt it slightly, but all of the language is the same. So it's any language other than or in addition to English. And if anybody lists anything other than or in addition to English, they don't automatically become identified as multilingual learners. They're just they become somebody who needs to be screened. So you're not automatically put into the ML program. You have to be identified as a multilingual learner. And we do have students that we screen who are never identified because they score proficient on the initial screener. So it is something that's not Lewiston specific, but it's much larger than us.
Okay, thank you, Liza. Okay, just say. If you
As a community health worker for community health clinical service in in Lewiston. I'm just respectfully disagreeing with the lady who just spoke. Automatically, it brings this, if someone speaks multilingual, they just put you as ALS. And I myself disputed or disagree. I went to the school system and I made my point, but they said they're going to look at it and still they didn't take any step. So the whole issue is, if someone is speaking more than one language, they should not just put the burden on it to take ALS, which is not really helping them out. So that's one thing the school board has to take this issue and look widely and get more input from the parent. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hassan Guidi. Do I have to mention my address? Oh, all right. I'm a community leader. There's two things I want to mention. I just want to mention from this, I have no kids and I didn't learn from here, from public schools. I'm in here in the United States, but hearing about law plan, they said she mentioned there was no new mayonnaise feedback included. So, and you guys are gonna vote for it, but I will recommend if you guys do not vote today, maybe do something else, but just look at the new mayonnaise feedback. That's one thing. And the second thing is new mayonnaise, they have a negative idea about ELLS or whatever they call. So if there was like a public school system and the school committee and the new mayonnaise can sit together and explain more about what their students are gonna go through with that ELL, if they gonna, because they speak more than one language, but it seems like the kids are not gonna go through like the other normal native English speakers. So I would really appreciate if there should be something come up. And yeah, that was the two things I want to mention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Parks first.
I didn't know if you were going to keep speaking to make a list. I wanted to say I appreciate the feedback from the community members that are here tonight. I've attended a few of Faucia's parent groups with Ashley and Elizabeth, and I received that same feedback at a lot of these parent groups that they've learned or they've been taught through the community that when filling out that form to not select yes, that there's other languages spoken in the household because they don't want their children automatically put into ELL. And so I think that we definitely need to, I get it that it comes down from the state, comes from the DOE, it's something that we have to do, but I think we need to find a way to advocate at the state level to make some changes, because if we just continue this way, more and more people are going to learn the workaround, and then it's not serving a purpose. And if it's not serving a purpose, why are we doing it? So I definitely think that we need to have broader conversations and try to figure out how to make this the most functional system.
Is heard.
Thank you. There is no option when they do like the initial assessment, like as a parent to like opt out. I mean, there is an option for the parent to opt out I guess that's a question for you.
Yes, so we do not need parent permission to screen a child. That comes from the Department of Education. So parents do have a right to refuse services, but they don't have a right to refuse an identification.
So that was my question. Like if someone identifies that they speak another language in their household and you do the initial screening and you determine that they could use ML services, is it the parent's option then at that point to say, no, we don't want to enroll our students, or they are required to enroll their students?
So they would still be identified, but we would, if they wanted to deny services, then we would follow the process. I can't remember what section it's in, but it does explain the section for denying services. Yep. I did want to add though, as part of the workaround, so at the bottom of the language use survey, there is a section, it's like a staff only section, and it's called a post enrollment identification. So if we have evidence that there is a language other than or in addition to English, and it does say English only, and we believe that language other than or in addition to English is impacting a student's ability to access the curriculum, we are legally required to administer a screener. So while there may be a loophole, we have to keep an eye on students. And if we find that there are forms that were filled out with English only, then we do have to proceed with administering that screener.
Ms. Bowden.
Thank you. So I guess forgive my ignorance. I'm not a multilingual individual, and I haven't raised any. So I'm trying to figure out what the concern is around being labeled multilingual and being a part of this program. Is it not working? Is there a stigma around it that it's bad in the community? I guess I'd like to see maybe a workshop or something for us with some new Mainers and figure out like what's going on and what's the best way to address this, because it doesn't sound like they're happy with the program, and I'm not comfortable. I understand it's state law and policy passed down, but I'm not comfortable telling our community they have to do something if they're not feeling like it's beneficial to their children. So I really want a better understanding of what's going on.
Hi, wait, can you guys hear me? Hi, my name is Layla, and I know a lot of students who take the access test, and like they all speak perfect English, and I don't know, somewhat they're forced to take it all, but they really don't take it pretty serious, and they end up getting bad scores on it, which makes them like keep taking it over and over again. And yeah, that's all I wanted to add. And I have a question about something. So for ELL classrooms, like when the students are learning English or whatever, or like taking lessons or whatever, I think they should be more involved with the students that speak English so they could like learn it easily. Does that make sense? Yeah. All right, thank you.
I'm going to go with Ashley first, and then I'm coming back to Megan. Go ahead, Ashley.
So Layla beat me to it and mentioned what I was going to say, but I also wanted to add that a lot of the concerns that parents, from what I've heard, is that sometimes the students are born here and they only speak English, but the language is another language is spoken at home. So then it creates like this, like, okay, like this is, I don't need this, so why am I in it? And then they have to test out of it. They don't take it serious. So it's like this big circle of, so that's just what I wanted to mention.
Ms. Parks.
I was curious if Layla had any information that she could share with us as to like the stigma that's tied to ELL, or why students wouldn't want to be participating in ELL. You don't have to if you don't have any information, but I didn't know because you spoke on it. I didn't know if you had anything else that you'd be willing to share. It is why some students wouldn't take the access test seriously, or why they wouldn't want to participate in ELL, and why they want to be more mainstreamed. Good. Push the button.
Can I think about it? Because I'm not sure.
I didn't want to put you on the spot. That's okay.
There'll be a test afterwards on this, so that's, I'm kidding. Ms. Scott.
So I guess a couple of questions where we've just removed the last one that we had in place. Is this something that we need to vote on tonight?
I don't know that it has to be tonight. We have good supports in place, and a lot of it aligns to the Department of Justice plan. I think it could come back. I would also add that this is a great public input.
Absolutely.
So that's very much appreciated. I also don't want to say that it's all just broken and it's all just wrong. We've seen people deny or refuse services along these lines because of, for whatever personal or family reasons, and watch them go into academic classes and absolutely fail, and then want the school to explain why they were in these classes that they couldn't be successful in. Because so much of this level of access and proficiency is not just around speaking and listening, it's around academic access. And so when you start getting into academic language, we find a lot of students who really struggle, who do need additional support to acquire that language to be successful in academic classes. So there's a lot of thinking here around, why do we do this? If people don't like it, there's a reason it's required by the state and federal government, and it's because of studies that go much further than what I know about. And I'm sure Liza could speak to it more, but we've also had students, again, not access the supports available and find that school becomes very challenging and they're not successful, and that has its own consequences.
So I guess to add to that, I think that this is a much bigger conversation that needs to happen on a state level with our Department of Education. And I think that maybe we might want to look at putting together a meeting with our legislative delegation. So I know that the city council is getting ready to meet with our legislative delegation as now that elections are over and they're preparing to go back to the state house at the beginning of the year. This would be, I think, a conversation where we could have that conversation on this level and with the community as well, so that they can hear what needs to be done and what's happening here and what the families here are experiencing. So maybe that there can be a change. Now, that being said, I don't think that we should maybe not vote for this, because I think this is actually a plan that we have that is better in place than what we had previously. But I do believe that we have to make sure that we have that conversation moving forward with our legislative delegation and be willing to ourselves go up to Augusta to speak for our community and speak to what the family members here want for us to do. Is that something that we could possibly put the word out to them and put a schedule together and then get that information out to the whole community so that everybody could join and we could have a good meeting on this?
Yeah, so your question about, do we need to vote on this or because we deleted the other one? The other one was so outdated and was not in compliance with any of the agreement that we have with the Department of Justice or the law. We've been meeting the law and our agreement with the Department of Justice, and it has, through the process of hiring Liza and our transition, this just hasn't come to the committee. So I wanted to be clear about that. The programming in which that students are experiencing and are part of today and tomorrow in Lewiston Public Schools isn't aligned with the new plan that you're looking at today, and not in line with the one that you deleted, because it wasn't up to where it needed to be. I think the other thing I wanted to just add was we blame our state, and our state is the where we get our direction, but we also they're taking guidance from the federal government as well. So when we talk about and Supreme Court decisions, which are part of this plan, which are where the word Lao is actually a person's name, and it's a case. So I just want to make sure that we're clear that some of this is absolutely something that can be discussed and can go from the state and the federal level, but some of it is Supreme Court decisions as well. And I think that there are pieces in here where we can also highlight for you, which we did with the curriculum committee as well. This was a result of Department of Justice, or this is a result of that court case. So that further conversation might be helpful if that's desired.
Ms. Scott?
Thank you. So that's my only concern with putting this off if we don't vote for this tonight. Don't want to do anything that's going to go against any federal laws or Supreme Court decisions that are already in place. But if we can delay it to the point where we can have further discussions around exactly what that is, so that we know exactly where that's at. But also I'd like to see that this is made available in other languages so that others can look at it along with us if we're going to do that, and then look at maybe having that meeting with our delegation, because I firmly believe that I agree that things are on a federal level, but states have states' rights and we can make changes in our state if we want to.
Go ahead, Jane.
I just want to say that the plan could be passed tonight, but it's always subject to come back. And I think we could book a session where we have open input, but my real hesitation here is a lot of the input I've heard that says we shouldn't do this or we need more input specifically spoke to the language of the Supreme Court cases that say why we must, and the vulnerability that we leave ourselves in, or the risk we put our district in if we're not compliant with those decisions.
So go ahead, Lila.
So I just wanted to answer, can you guys hear me? So I just wanted to answer her question. Personally, the main reason why most of the students hate like to take this access test is like it's something that repeats like every year, same questions. It's really easy but tricky at the same time. Like, yeah, it's really tricky. That's all I wanted to say.
Brief. Yes, go ahead.
Don? Yeah, it's a brief one. I just wanted the part that the young lady is saying that this is the federal law. I think we can always change the laws. If it doesn't work for us and it concerns our kids, we need to change it. We need to challenge it. So that's the process that we need to go instead of saying this is the education department and the federal. We need to stick with it. We have to vote or anything like that. It's better if it's bad for our kids. If we need to change it, let's debate it and bring it to the legislator and change things. And the young lady over there also said something that was very important, that it looked like she was in my mind. There are kids, for instance, my kids were born here. They speak English. They barely speak my language, but I'm the one who is a second speaker of the language. So for the criteria of somebody speaks in the house another language, this has to be, the kid has to go to LL classes. It's totally wrong. The other thing is, there are kids who will benefit from LL classes, English as a second language. There are kids who definitely will benefit, but there are a lot of people that are not benefiting, and they are taken back from their progress. So I think it needs to be debated instead of saying that this is the law we need to follow. I think we need to debate and try to change it. And I end on that one. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Whitlaw.
I don't know if I'm okay with voting if we feel like we need to, knowing that we will be looking into things. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who spoke tonight. And I think you were trying to butter up Miss Scott down there, calling her a young lady. But so I would be okay making a motion to approve the LAO plan with the intention that we will collaborate with community members and legislation to make it better if we can.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
So there's a second by Ms. Parks. Any discussion? All in favor? Looks like that's nine. That is, we will adopt the LAO plan as presented. But hope. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Ashley.
I just wanted to say, like, if we do bring this to we are going to bring this to a legislative level. I would love to see some of you guys come and advocate and get whoever else we can to come support this, because I think it's really, really important for them to hear for the people that are directly affected. Yeah, absolutely. And Mana will be there. Yay. All right. That's it. Thank you.
Chair Damon.
Ms. Parks.
Before we move on to the next agenda item, I don't know if all of us received it, but some of us have just received an email while we were having that discussion from an audience member who is stating that there's several people here in the audience that wanted to speak during the public comment, but they didn't understand the agenda process and they weren't aware that they had an opportunity to speak at that time. And so they're asking if they can have another opportunity to speak at public comment. It doesn't say what topic, so I don't know if it was about that topic. If it's about what we're about to discuss next, or if it was just general conversation, but they asked if we could clarify the public comment period, because they weren't aware of what was going on when we had our public comment period.
We'll do this. We're gonna do this next item, and then before before I come on with agenda item 15, we can open it back up again.
Thank you.
Item 14 is to receive an update on quiet room spaces at LPS.
So I shared a memo with all of you. This was brought up by students through Lewiston Youth Advisory Council and also Member Scott, Member Beauparlant, and some others, I believe, to say, what is the criteria for spaces to be used? Really, the question was around prayer. And so the memo is titled Quiet Room or Spaces at LPS. Because of the input we got back from legal representation, because we want to make sure that we do this right. And I'm going to read this out loud just so people have a context of what we have shared back. So we were approached with a question and request for space in schools for students to take a moment or two, pray, and or practice some other practice in a space at school. There are many things to consider. In addition, we've included language from legal counsel in the packet. The executive summary is that having these spaces requires a few things. Part one is a space. Part two is supervision. So the space has to be supervised, and that the person supervising the space cannot participate, endorse, or promote anything faith-based. They have to remain completely neutral. And that these activities, according to some federal law, are not done during instructional time. So it would have to be like a study hall or lunch or some of those non-structured times. And again, from my experience, I've even seen students practice some of their faith and beliefs in between classes if they are close enough and they can do certain things. So the challenges that we see really, and not that these challenges can't be resolved, but I do see them as challenges. Our schools don't have a lot of space. So could we create a space? Yes. I think we could figure that out. But the challenge is, even though we have a new addition on the high school, for example, we still have people that don't have a room to call their own. That number is much smaller now. It used to be upwards of 18, and I think they're down to 3 or 4, maybe even 5 at this point. Second piece is we had not planned on compensating anyone for supervision. It does not say that you have to compensate those for supervision. So it could be like volunteers or things like that. The biggest challenge to that legal mentioned was if you don't compensate someone, how do you maintain expectations of the participation and supervision and being neutral? I'd also add that we continue to hire and fill open positions. And that input from some, not all, but some local religious leaders is that depending on the faith, that students can practice their faith and their rituals outside of school hours. But again, we can see the benefit to a space such as this, but we wanted to note that there was legal expectations and challenges. The second item in your packet is specifically from legal. It's a lot of legalese, but really it boils down to those pieces, is that we cannot endorse anything specific, but the spaces could be created. They're supposed to be supervised, and anybody supervising must remain neutral. And that last caveat of not during instructional time. So those are some of the pieces, and I think there'll be more input. But we were asked to find the information, and Karen and I did some digging, wanted to bring it back to you.
Questions? Ms. Whitlow?
I appreciate you guys looking into that. I don't know much about other people's religions. I do know that praying on a regular basis throughout the day. I don't know the times. So I don't know if is lunch period a time where these don't need to be answered right now, but these are just questions in my head. Is lunch time frame, is that a common time for someone to pray? And I don't know if anybody knows that, but I think it's a discussion to have down the road, or having groups come together and talking about this so that we have a better idea of the needs of the students and or teachers or staff. So I personally would like to have some type of I don't know if it's a workshop or something at the high school after school someday where everybody can come together.
Anyone else? Linda?
Thank you. So I really appreciate you getting this information. It was me that initially brought this forward. I am the advisor on the Lewiston Youth Advisory Council, and it is a very diverse group of high school students on that council. And they brought the question to me if there was prayer in our availability in our schools. So I brought it here, and I appreciate that we got this information. I also appreciate that you reached out to our legal counsel for our school department in the city of Lewiston to find out exactly what we can and cannot do. I would like to hear from others though and hear what they have to say. I really appreciate everybody coming out this evening. Thank you.
Anyone on the school board? Ms. Ames?
I really thought that the process we used for the Pledge of Allegiance, where the students came up with a plan and proposed it to us, a very specific plan, and proposed it to us, was useful as an educational tool for them, and it helped us get in touch with the students' opinions and ideas and philosophies. So I would recommend or suggest maybe that we ask the LIAC people to come up with a plan and bring it to us so that we could vet it and maybe vote on it.
One way we could do that too would be to share, maybe Karen and I could come over to a meeting and share some of the constraints that we became aware of. So they could build off of that from a framework.
Ms. Scott?
Thank you. So the kids are working on a huge project right now around mental health. This has been their goal to focus on that. So they're pretty busy right now, but I think that what I'm going to suggest, because we do have a meeting next week, and I was going to bring up at the end of the agenda on an event that they're going to be holding on the 8th of December, that maybe at the beginning of the year, we can approach this subject again with them and get the information to them and see where they might be on that moving forward. But I will bring it up at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Jake and Karen, for that. We're going to break with the agenda briefly at a request. Is there any? Was
Public comment on this or any comment?
well. Was there any public comment about this quiet room issue? Go ahead.
Good evening. I think you mentioned about the legality. Is it legal for a student to pray in public school? The answer is yes. Contrary to popular myth, the Supreme Court has never outlawed prayer in school. Students are free to pray alone or a group, as long as such prayer are not disruptive, do not infringe upon the rights of the others. When it comes now in the high school, which my kids also are going now, the prayer time is less than 10 minutes as a voluntary. So I think what we're asking as a community is the school to designate a room which the kids will go and just pray. Right now, they're practicing that. So just we're asking the board also to understand this issue and, accommodate them properly. Thank you.
Yeah, it is. I think it's very important and very helpful that it's not going to be necessarily said a mosque or a church or anything. It's a quiet room. It's a meditation room. St. Mary does have anybody, a Christian, a Muslim, a Buddha, anybody can go and meditate. So it's just, and it doesn't need anybody's supervision. This is a quiet room, a meditation room. They can go, anybody, and time-wise, it is not the time of the instruction. It's probably, I don't know their lunch time, probably around 12:30. The rest of the time, their prayer is at home. They don't need, so that's the only time probably kids will be at school. And that's the time that we are requesting maybe a room to be designated for anybody, any student who is there to meditate, a quiet room, and it doesn't need any supervision. Thank you.
So, as I said, I'm the 2020 graduate. So, from 2016 till 2020, first of all, I'm a Muslim, and I can't call myself Muslim unless I pray the obligated prayers. If I don't pray them, then I'm like, why am I calling myself a Muslim? So, as we all know, time changes. So also our prayer times change. So during lunch, like I take like 10-15 minutes from it to do my prayers. But the difficult thing was where though? Where should I play? Like where can I play where I'm not like disturbed? I'm not like seeing. So the only place I found was like under the stairs. So that's where like I tried praying. But like when winter comes, it becomes difficult. It's like too cold. So like the problem for me through like my 4 years of high school was where can I pray? Where can I find somewhere that's not like not that cold, like somewhere like either a room temperature is fine, but not like too cold. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hamda, and I wanted to add, first of all, I am a student at Lewiston High School at the moment, and like for students to go pray during their lunchtime, I don't think that's like something we can do. Like sometimes the lines of lunch is even too long to even eat, and like I don't think students can take out time from their lunch to go pray. So it's like that should be something that could be like considered. Thank you.
Layla?
So last year we had DAs like every other day, right? So I would take advantage of DA to pray. Like my DA was in the library, and I would like usually pray in the library, even though the library lady told me like, oh, you're not supposed to pray here because like all the other religions are gonna try to do whatever they do in here next time. So I was like, I just listened to her and talked to my DA teacher, and he was like, "Oh, you're all good to practice and pray here." So I continued praying there, and then finally he got a room, and me and my friend would usually pray there. But this year, like we barely have DA. It's like Monday and Friday, so really don't have any time to pray. And as she said, lunch is like the lines are really long. And unless you bring food from your own house and you take the time of lunch to pray and eat in class, I think that might work. But yeah, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you, Leila. Anyone else? Okay, we're gonna close this agenda item 14. There's been a Miss Scott.
I'm sorry, I just want to explain to the folks that are here that we're not voting on anything tonight. There's no vote, there's nothing like that. This was only to get information because I had a request from students to get more information. But I don't think this is the end of the conversation, and I just want to let everybody know that.
Okay, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Linda. So we have received a request to reopen public comment. It's a bit of a break in how we typically would do the agenda, but I'll repeat the public input statement. Members of the public may address the school committee for up to 3 minutes on non-agenda items at this time and on agenda items later, as they have been doing. Comments that pertain to staff, personal matters, or student issues should be directed to the superintendent or the appropriate staff member of Lewiston Public Schools. Public comment shall be directed to the school committee, be brief, not repetitive, and related to the matter at hand. Before starting, please state your name, address, and any affiliation to Lewiston Public Schools. I understand there were some folks that came that didn't understand when the public session was actually available. So if there's anyone currently in the room who would like to address the school committee in public session, now is your time to do that. Someone interpreting that for somebody, or?
Yeah.
marka hore magacayga waa Bashiir waa in leaderka masaajidka iyo committeega ayaan kamid ahay.
My name is Bashir. I'm one of the mosque leader.
Marka hore aad baa u mahadsantihiin.
First of all, thank you so much.
Fursadan aad na siiseen inaan ku hadallo weliba waxa naga naqusay.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity to voice our views.
Waxa kilaatan rabaa inaan ni sheego ka diin ahaan anagu aan aaminsanahay saddex qodob oo inaan ni sheego ayaan rabaa. Qodobka koowaad in haddaan muslim nahay in qofku markuu ilaahay rumeeyo in salaadu ay tahay markuu qofku adeerti gaadho hambayso uu gaadho qaangaadh markuu gaadho inay tahay salaadu wax qasab ku ah inuu tukado maahin wax maaragtay choice maahin wax qasab ku ah.
So I as a practicing Muslim, I want to mention 3 things. First, as a Muslim, you have to declare the oneness of God. And then when you reach 15, it's compulsory for you to pray 5 times a day.
Marka ubadkeeguna welwel bay qabaan waayo waa waxbay rumaysan yihiin marka markas waxay ku jiraan welwel.
So our kids worry a lot because by missing one prayer is a big sin. So they always worry, like what's going to happen if I continue missing my prayers while I'm at school.
So maadaama constitutionka America uu yani free religion ama diinta uu xorriyad siiyey marka in xorriyad loo siiyo inay salaadooda tukadaan meesha ay joogaan marka ay iskuulka ay joogaan in loo helo meel ay ku tukadaan in loo helo.
So going back to the constitution of the country, there's freedom of religion. Anyone can practice the religion that they would like to practice. So as a community member, I would like our youth or our kids to have a space so that they can pray.
Wakilaad waxaan rabnaa in loo helo meel space ay ku tukadaan qof ilaaliya inta ay tukanayaan si iyaguna muxuu ahaa ay waqtiga u loos gareyn oo galaaskii iyo timekii loogu talagalay aynan ugu qaadan meesha waa dhalinyaro waa ubad marka intaana supervisorkuna lagu qasbay.
So supervision will be one big thing. As we know, we're dealing with youths. Sometimes they might misuse those the times that they were offered. So we'll also request that, you know, supervision be provided.
Marka waxa oo dhan aan u leenahay si qof u ilaaliyo ubadka sababta ma rabno in ruleka iskuulka ama nidaamka iskuulka in salaada qofka muslimka uu tukanaya ay dib gaadhsiiso ma rabno.
And we also don't want to, because of their behaviors that may arise, we don't want those behaviors to infringe or disturb, you know, the process of the school setting.
Marka aad baa umahadsantihiin.
Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? All set? All set. Okay, I'll close this section of the public hearing. Next item on the agenda is report from the school committee chair. I really don't have anything to report at this time. Based on the time, I think we should take maybe a quick 5-minute break, go into recess, and then we will continue with the superintendent and then from there. Is that okay with everybody? Okay, we're in recess for 5 minutes. We'll go back into session. Next agenda item is report from the superintendent.
A couple of things. First, I wanted to thank Layla for joining us and sharing things. She's also looking at her dad who was here, who is her ride. So she might sneak out to the side, but she did say that she didn't have anything she wanted to add at this point. The only other thing I had written down was to actually ask Member Scott about joining the Lewiston Youth Advisory Council to have a discussion about those constraints to see what else we can do further. So we'll find a time to do that down the road and go about it. I agree. I think a student process would be fantastic. That input is so valuable. So, but that was really all I had to add. And thank you, Layla. Good job.
Next item on the agenda is report from the city council rep.
Thank you. So we did have a city council meeting on November 1st. We had several of the items on the agenda were around our code of ordinances, zoning, and land use code. We are doing a lot of work changing some of that coding, trying to make it easier for folks to, I'll give a brief example, put a shed in their backyard without having to get a permit to put a shed in your backyard, just making processes like that a lot easier. We also approved the International Association of Firefighters contract, and that was about it for that meeting. And we do have a pretty good sized meeting tomorrow evening as well, starting at 7 o'clock. We do not have any workshop tomorrow night. That's all I have for now.
Thank you, Linda. Our student rep just left, but we have really appreciated her input. That was valuable, and it's wonderful that we're going to get that, and hopefully it'll continue. I mean to put her on the spot, but she responded beautifully. The next item on the agenda is 19, updates from school committee subcommittees. Negotiations is not in session at all. We have nothing at the moment. Yeah, I agree with Tanya there. Facilities is actively working, but we're really up to speed on where we were at with that. So I guess it would be policy and curriculum. Any report from Mr. Bopalon?
Elizabeth, Megan, anything on curriculum? I think we had a little. I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
We have a meeting scheduled for the 5th of December for the curriculum subcommittee before our meeting on the 5th of December.
Okay, I do need to talk later because my knee operation will be the 2nd, and I'm gonna have to get on Zoom, and thank you.
We had a dyslexia subcommittee meeting, and we had a presentation from Spurwink, and they came and showed us some different websites and how to use assistive technology and help students instead of just struggling to read and access their education, tools that will allow them to have it read to them or speech to text. A lot of great stuff. And so I think it's going to be important that our educators are aware of all these tools. And I know that there are some that have been used throughout, but I think there's just a lot. And I think it will be really important, especially for our older students who struggle to read, for them to just be able to have a little bit more independence when it comes to their schoolwork. So I'm excited to see kind of how we introduce this stuff more and have more, I guess, professional development in a sense for our teachers to learn this and to be able to teach our kids how to use it, bring it home and use it. And so I think it was a really great hour presentation. So thank you, Karen, for setting that all up for us.
Anything else from subcommittees?
Just share that tis the season. So we have a finance subcommittee. We're working on our booking, so we're communicating about that. And audit's just about done, so we'll be able to report on that and look forward to projections and all things budget season. It's official. We also have a Pathways Subcommittee meeting in the books. That's tomorrow. This week. It's this week. So it's all one big calendar squish for me. But so we're meeting, and we did to try to set the course for that. Invite others from high school, middle school, and various other stakeholders that would want to contribute to the initial layer of that conversation. And but I could see that being a pretty dynamic group that would invite different people in as appropriate at different times to look at some things as related to graduation pathways and communication about student status.
Policy Subcommittee meets again on Monday, November 28th at 4 o'clock.
Anything else? Next item would be school committee community announcements. Linda, you had one.
I actually have two. So previously I had mentioned that the Lewiston Youth Advisory Council was going to be holding a Be Kind to Your Mind forum. It's going to be held at Connors Elementary from 6 to 8. And there are several people that are going to be there too. Myself, Officer Philippon, Megan will be there as well as one of the speakers. And we're still working on a couple of other Tri-County Mental Health and another group to come in and be part of that forum. The kids are really looking at putting this together to not only speak with the kids, but with the parents as well about being kind to your mind and allowing the parents to maybe ask some questions about mental health with their kids and what might be happening. So I'm looking forward to this. They have been working so hard on this project. They've been doing a great job. So that's a good thing. And then, excuse
Linda,
me,
what was the date?
that is December 8th from at 6 to 8 at Connors Elementary. And then the other thing I wanted to put out there again was the Plaza Festival, which is the citywide holiday festival that is going to be held in Dufresne Park. And that is December 3rd from 11 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. Again, we have many youth that are volunteering at that event to help be just helpful greeters and handing out different things. And this is going to be where there'll be the lighting of the Christmas tree as well as the lighting of the menorah and celebration of all holidays throughout the community for the winter season holidays. And there's also going to be, I'm going to repeat this again because I'm kind of excited. There's going to be live reindeer there, and there's going to be an ice skating rink, and there's going to be an artisan fair, and there's going to be music, and the streets being closed down from Ash Street to Lisbon Street. So it should be a pretty good event. That's it. Thank you.
And have you checked to make sure that it'll be cold enough for ice?
I've heard it's going to snow in 2 days, so I think we're going to be all set. And it's not like ice. It is some sort of other, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but I've been guaranteed by them that there's going to be ice skating available and ice skates available for those that can't bring their own. So.
Just heard.
Thank you. So unfortunately, I have married into a family that likes to exercise on holidays. And my mother-in-law through the Y is doing their mashed potato mile Thanksgiving Day. It's at OLEC, which is Stetson Road, their outdoor learning center. It's from 8:30 to 10. It's free for everybody. So whether you're a member or not, you can register. And all the children that run in the race do get medals at the end, and it is not a timed event. So if you are the type of family who wants to run before you eat your Thanksgiving meal, this is an option for you. I will not be participating.
Ms. Parks.
It's not exactly a community announcement, I guess, per se, but I wanted to thank the families of our students who came out to speak tonight. It's not often we get a lot of feedback from the New Manor population in the community, and we appreciate it. And we hope that you encourage more people to continue to come and speak, because it's a lot of the feedback that we need to receive and we don't always get. So thank you, and I hope you continue to come.
Future agenda items. Ms. Bowden.
Thank you. We received an email. I believe everyone received an email from a student. I'm getting like lost on the time. It was probably a couple weeks ago now. We haven't had a meeting in a while. And she brought up some concerns mainly around the bathrooms at Lewiston High School. And you know, it's no secret I have a child at Lewiston High School. I had a conversation with her about bathrooms and how absolutely awful it is when you need to use a bathroom at Lewiston High School because there are very few. The lines are very long. Numerous students will be in there at once, vaping, doing whatever they're doing, holding it up. And so I think that we really need to look into this and have a serious conversation. One of the members, I believe it was Ms. Whitlow, suggested that we go walk through the school as a committee and get a tour of where the bathrooms are and just a general feel for what's going on at the high school with the bathroom situation. So I'm hoping that we can follow up with that. I would really love to go and see with my own eyes what's going on. And maybe the conversation needs to be had about Lewiston Middle School as well, because then my middle schooler chimed in on how absolutely awful it is at the middle school to have to use the bathroom as well. And I understand why it is the way that it is, as far as being shut down and one at a time. But I just, this student's email said something that was kind of powerful, which is you're taking away basic human right. We need to use the bathroom. We should be able to use the bathroom. And she's 100% correct on that. So I really think we need to talk about this and we really need to go on site and see what's going on and come up. Yes, an action plan. Thank you.
I think the only caution I would have there is there wouldn't be more than 3 members at any given point in time. Otherwise, it would be a de facto meeting.
So we
If
make
you-
it a meeting.
Four would
We
be,
make it a workshop. I don't know.
well, just,
It's important.
yeah, I believe it's 3, any more than 3, right? But anyway, we have to be careful of that. It's
We can just have
Yeah,
a workshop.
either that or potentially have a school board meeting at the high school. Although you're not going to see what it looks like during the day.
I was going to say, you need to see it in person as it's happening. Otherwise, you're not going to get a feel for what it is.
Could we just come?
Go ahead.
May we just show with our badges and walk around the halls? Is that even
I would,
possible?
I and administration, I think staff would appreciate a heads up and a
Yeah.
coordinated approach to.
That's what I
to
thought I
this
would
effort.
get that out.
Um,
Yeah.
And I also think we need to be mindful of what activities we're carrying out. I don't know how to watch a restroom. I get it, but I also I don't know that elected officials want to be standing in a bathroom monitoring certain things. It's delicate. I think we need to be very thoughtful about how we go about it.
I think we're all aware that the seriousness of the vaping issue and how we get control of that. I know there was some discussion about sensors to pick up on that, but that became an issue as well, because they're not necessarily it's a problem, to say the least. Yeah, it was $200,000 to do the vaping monitors at the high school. Yeah. And there is not funding necessarily for that, so. Anything else under future agenda items, Ms. Eames?
I just wanted to bring back what Jay Rich suggested earlier, which is to at least discuss the land acknowledgements as part of the opening routine every meeting. Thank you.
Medina?
So I met with some wonderful ladies the other day from the 4-H program, some students, and they really wanted to have an opportunity to voice their opinions on the substance use amongst their peers, and wanted to know if we could hold like a workshop where students and parents are welcomed, open to the public, because it's very important to, hear from everybody. So that's one thing. I promised them I'd mention that. And then another thing that I wanted to mention was, and I'm sure all of you guys have seen it too, in the Lewiston Rocks groups, there's always parents talking about the bullying in the schools, how they feel like they go to the teachers, administration, and it still continues. And I've even seen parents say things like, at this point, if my kids hits them, it's whatever, because nothing's being done anyways. And I think that's really concerning. So I really just wanted to see, I know that the students get talked to, there's restorative justice, but I do think it's important that at some point we bring in parents and kids and have like a mediation. I know in the past I've had problems with my daughter getting bullied, and I'd go to the principal and it'd get addressed, it still continued. And then I personally like went to the parent and the student, we discussed it, and then it ended. And I'm not saying that happens in every single situation, but I do think it's important that we really address this, because kids don't want to go to school and parents don't want to send their kids to school and they don't feel heard. So just wanted to mention that.
Ms. Scott?
Thank you. So I'm going to further on that conversation because I had intended on bringing that up for a future agenda item. And it's not the first time we've seen on social media a massive conversation around what parents are feeling or some bullying going on in our schools. So I actually spoke to Member Parks when we were out together a couple nights ago about this. And I'm wondering if we can approach it maybe in several different directions. So I was thinking possibly we meet with PTOs. Is there a possibility that not necessarily, it would probably be a public meeting, or if a few school committee members who could take the opportunity to go meet with the PTOs and start speaking to the parents and addressing it in a different way. I think that, you know, when we look at some of these conversations that are happening, a lot of the parents are saying that, well, this is happening in this place and this is happening at that place. I think we need to get the parents involved. I think we need to be out there, be vocal about parents. You know, if you feel that there is a situation, maybe you need to be helping on the playground if we can, or helping as a bus monitor, or some of these other situations, so that we see more parents involved, like those schools in Chicago where the dads are there and they're called dads on duty. And I'm not sure that that's going to be something effective, but when we have staff that have education to focus on, maybe it's time that parents are out there saying, I'm standing at the end of the stairway after LMS is out of school, and I'm going to help the teachers, and we're not going to allow this kind of behavior from the kids. And so that we make it known that we're taking this seriously and we need to do something about it. And we want our parents to know we're taking it seriously, but it can't just come from the school committee. It has to come from the parents. It has to come from the PTOs. They have to be talking about it, and they have to be the ones that are willing to have those conversations with their kids and really require accountability from their kids. Like I required accountability from my children. You don't behave that way. How do we approach it that way without having to make it a policy decision or something that just comes from this level? It has to be the whole community.
Thank you. So I will say, as a member of the PTO, there are very few parents that actually do attend PTO. It is the same parents every time. And those parents are usually the ones that are already talking to their kids about how to behave in school and what is expected of them and how they should behave. So I'm wondering if maybe there's another avenue other than PTO, because I'm not sure that you're going to get much feedback or participation. I know that Charlotte does a great job sending out talking points and notices, and things get sent home all the time about joining PTO, and it's always just the same few that show up.
Ms. Parks?
I think there's a different demographic of people involved in PTO at different schools. I think it varies around the district. But I also think another opportunity would be to set up little community forums with a few school board members at different locations, maybe one at Tall Pines, one at Hillview, one different places all around the city at Longley, so that it's accessible by parents at all school districts, and have the parent conversations and parent-led forums, because they're the ones that want to have a voice, and Lewiston Rocks isn't the best place to have a voice to find solutions. So I think that spreading out around town and letting parents come up with their own solutions to these problems and working things out on that level is a good way to approach it.
Mr. Superintendent?
I just want to share that I don't scan Lewiston Rocks because I don't have the time, to be honest. But I do oftentimes have people share things with me so I can be aware, and it's always appreciated. And I'm not going to pick and choose names or titles from that platform, but I can say that there was one recently that seemed to have a lot to say, and it was brought across my desk. And as I looked into it, not only did I think the behavior on that platform to be bullying in itself and inappropriate, it came to find that student, the parent of that student, was try to be thoughtful how I say this, was the instigator, was the antagonist for half a dozen other kids at a particular school who had complained about that child and the way they were being treated on a regular basis. So I guess don't always believe what you see. Not to say that we don't have concerns and that there's something we can do, but sometimes people go to those platforms to share things that are taught behaviors at home that when they come out at school, the same ways they get posted online, it is in fact disruptive to kids' learning.
Ms. Scott.
Sorry to keep going on this, but I would agree 100%, Jake. And I, to be honest with you, was ready to go on that page and say, you want to talk about this? And let's really talk about this. And I'm not afraid to call it out myself. And I think that if we're willing to have this conversation or even let the community know that we're having this conversation, I feel even more emboldened to be able to call it out and say, you know, it's about time you all step up. I'm not afraid to say that either. And I think that's what needs to be done here. And you have my support 100%. And I want you to know that the school system has my support 100%, as well as the staff. And I think that when you have a lot of people doing a lot of this or a lot of this, you know, without showing up to meetings or being on part of the PTO, because I was a president of a PTO for a long time, I know that there's a very few people that we need to be out there saying also that we're not afraid to talk about it. And we want to have this conversation, come see us. And then I can go on social media and say, hey, we had this, where were you? And not be afraid to support all of that either.
Ms. Hurd.
Thank you. On a different note, my last PTO meeting, we had Liza from Food Corp come and talk to us. As she is doing a lot of work over at McMahon with their garden, and they or she would like to come and present to the school committee at some point. So I would like to get that on the agenda. They're doing a lot of good work over there. She is, I'm happy to say, including our pre-K program, which is great because they don't get any participation in any unified arts or anything. And it's a really great program. She is also part of the program where we had our student from McMahon and our nutrition staff win states. So that's really great. And she said they are getting some more funding. She's adding gardens and stuff over at McMahon. So there's a lot going on there that I think would be super beneficial. She also mentioned too, 21st Century is having some more space become available for students. I guess it was pretty hard to get in previous years, but they are having some availability. So potentially for parents to look at that as an option for their kiddos if they want to get into some cooking classes or something like that.
Ms. Whitlaw.
Not a future agenda item, but community announcement. I did read in the Sun Journal about the Connors student who had artwork made into a bag at, was it Rogueware? I thought that was really impressive, and I actually would love to get a presentation from that student and the art teacher, because I like how did this all transpire, and I just thought it was really great. So I guess maybe it is a future agenda item.
That's, yeah, when we have this, when we bring up the bullying at a future agenda item, we'd love your input on it.
You can also send us an email.
That being said, we'll move on to agenda item.
Sorry.
Ms. Parks.
Sorry, I have it right in front of me and I blanked. Is it possible to schedule a presentation for the 2020, whatever results we just got back for the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey? I don't think we've seen a report back from that for a few years, and I would like to see what our stats are at district-wide. The Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey, the surveys that they put out during the school year to ask kids questions about their smoking or drinking, drug habits, those behavior things, and all of the what our kids are exposed to. A more realistic view of it than what we might otherwise know.
Okay. All right, so we've got some future agenda items that, we'll bring some of them up as we go along. They won't all happen at once, but we'll get to them. We'll try anyway. Although budgets are coming, so. That being said, anything else? No. We'll move on to agenda item number 22. I need a motion to go into executive session to conduct a student disciplinary hearing under Title 20A 101-9 and Title 4056B.
So moved.
We have a motion by Ms. Bowden.
Second.
And seconded by Ms. Whitlow. Is there any discussion? All in favor? So moved. We are in exec.